If you're new to pattern making or feeling a bit overwhelmed by the whole thing, I'm a pattern maker. I do teach pattern making as well, so I know how much there is to learn. Or perhaps you just want to learn how to make patterns so you can make your own clothes. Pattern hacking is the best way to start. Hi, welcome to Pattern Making with Lee. In this video, we're going to talk about pattern hacking. I'll tell you what it is, share my 7-step pattern hacking process, and I'll give you some tips and ideas to help get you started. Pattern hacking is essentially modifying an existing sewing pattern or block into a new design. For example, using my CLIQD oversized shirt block, I made this summer dress by simply removing the box pleat from the back, shortening the sleeves and adding a roll-up sleeve cuff, and lengthening and straightening the hem. And to make this linen fisherman style shirt, I brought the shoulder seam forward, turned the standard front button placket into a folded edge placket, added some pleats to the pocket, and shortened and straightened the hem. By using tried and tested sewing patterns or blocks, you will get great results quickly. And by learning pattern making in small, sort of bite-sized chunks, it will feel less overwhelming and more rewarding too. But there is a catch. Pattern hacking sounds great, right? And it is. It's what professional pattern makers will do if they can. Hey, if you've got a great block or sewing pattern to use for a pattern, why would you start again? We've got deadlines too. But there are two things that make pattern hacking quite challenging if you don't have a lot of pattern making experience. Firstly, knowing how to select the right sewing pattern or block. And I'm going to walk you through the whole pattern hacking process in a second and give you some tips for selecting the right pattern. But the second problem is getting the knowledge to make these hacks. Yes, you are making small changes, and they are a lot easier than, say, turning a big complex drape into a pattern, but they're only easy if you know how to make the changes. And it's this information that's really hard to come by, because it's not in pattern making books, and it's not taught at pattern making courses. Most pattern making courses and books focus on the big things. You know, how to create a block, how to drape on a mannequin, how to make volume using slash and spread techniques in gathering, the big traditional pattern making topics. They're great ways to get started, but they don't really focus on finishes, how to do different design details, how to make sure your pattern actually works in the end and you can send it to production if you're a designer. I guess because there are just so many different options, right? There's so many different design details, so many different silhouettes. How could you possibly squeeze all those into a weekend or a month or even a year-long course? It's pretty much impossible. So in the end, you end up having to learn things from people in the industry or at home using your own trial and error process. But for those of you who don't want to work in industry for years and years before you can create a pattern, I've summarised a decade of industry experience into my CLIQD Pattern Kit guides. So essentially these guides are just massive pattern hacking tools. Each guide is written for a certain block, and it pretty much shows you how to turn that block into any design based on it. So any design based on that silhouette. And if you can't find information you need, email me. Anyone who's left a comment on my YouTube videos knows that I respond really quickly and you're very easy to contact. So if you can't find information you need, you can get in touch. But just to give you an idea, my oversized shirt guide is 140 pages long, over 140 pages, and the section on shirts in the pattern making Bible is 17 pages. And it's mostly based on showing you how to create different silhouettes. So my guides are incredibly complex and go into a lot of detail, walk you through it step by step, and I will show you what's inside in a second. But while it's also a technical guide to show you how to do all these design features and make all these changes, also think of it as a pattern hacking inspiration source. Often it's hard if you don't have a lot of pattern making experience to know what actually is possible to do. So this guide essentially, it's 140 pages of different ideas that you can use to turn that one block into endless possibilities. The oversized shirt guide is broken down into 4 sections. The first section is Make a Plan, which helps you identify the changes you need to make to the block to turn to your pattern. And then part 2 will help you select the best pattern cutting method and give you step-by-step instructions on how to twile your block. Part 3, Unleash Your Creativity, walks you through all the changes you can make to the block, such as adjusting the length, changing the button placket and collar, lots of information on different collars, and then how to adjust the yoke and change the shoulder seam position, how to change all the different parts of the sleeve, including its silhouette, adding pleats, adding gathering, using an elastic band, creating different types of chest pockets and belts and epaulets and roll-up sleeve tabs. And actually this is quite cool, how to add trims. Then I'll show you how to finish your pattern, so select different hem allowances, and you can use the Find Your Finishes guide to select the best seam finishes. And there are some pro sewing tips at the end. First, have an idea and choose your fabric. Then, select your block or sewing pattern. The closer your sewing pattern or block is to your design, the easier it will be. So spend some time thinking about which pattern and block is best for you to use. And here are some tips to help you out. Make sure it has the same silhouette. And by silhouette, I mean how fitted it is. If you want to make a fitted dress in woven fabric, make sure there are enough darts. And if you want something more oversized, you don't need darts. So have a look at the silhouette and see if it's right for what you want. A silhouette is kind of a hard thing to change in pattern making, so it involves a lot of fitting. And if you want sleeves, make sure the pattern actually has sleeves, and have a look at the armhole. See whether it's dropped below the shoulder point or it's on top. Once again, the armhole is kind of a bit hard to change because you need to change the sleeve as well. So have a look at the armhole, make sure it's right for your design as well. For example, I'd use this block if I want to make a fitted dress or top, but I don't really want darts. This block is really special, and it's what a lot of high-end designers use because it combines the traditional 2 bust darts on a torso block to make one beautiful non-pointy dart. And if I wanted to create an oversized shirt or shirt dress, I would use my oversized shirt block, which has a dropped armhole to give it a relaxed look. Tip number 2, choose a pattern that fits you or your sample size well. You can buy the blocks I perfect over my career on my website, and I've done a video on how to fit dress blocks to your body as well. You can also use your own wardrobe, so if you have a piece of clothing that you really love and want to use as a base to create more patterns, just copy it. And I've done a video on how to copy your own clothing accurately, and I'll put a link to that video and the fitting video in the description. Tip number 3, before you pick your size, make sure you've measured yourself recently. Then you need to think about ease. Ease is just how much bigger your pattern or block is than your body's measurements, and I will do a whole video on ease, and if a card's popped up, I have now done that video. But essentially, how much ease you add depends on your fabric, style, and how you want to feel. This is a guide for a fitted dress. Essentially, thicker fabrics constrict the body more, so you need more ease. Ease also depends on the style. If it's oversized, there will be more ease. But most importantly, it really depends on how you want to feel. Some of us like to feel more supported and figure hugging, other people like a looser fit. So think about how you want to feel in the garment before you pick your size. Step 3. If you like this pattern or block, chances are you'll want to use it again, so work from a copy. Or better yet, get a PDF version. I sell all my blocks as PDFs, that way you can print them again and again for different designs, and it'll save you a lot of time, because tracing does take time, especially this shirt. It has 15 pattern pieces, so make your life easier, make the process quicker, get a PDF version. And if you are doing an asymmetric design, make sure you copy the left and right side, and don't cut the pattern out yet. Leave paper around the edges, that way you can make your adjustments really easily. Step 4. Identify what changes you need to make so you can start researching for the right information, whether it's my guide or a YouTube video. All my guides come with a make a plan template. It's just an A4 sheet of paper with a sketch of the block, which you can draw your design over. It just makes it a lot easier to visualize the changes you need to make. Then I would suggest, once you know which changes you need to make a list in the order you're going to make them. In general, I would start with any changes to the silhouette, the neckline, the armhole, that sort of thing. Get the perimeter sort of worked out. Then I'd focus on making volume changes, adding gathering, adding style lines. And once you have the framework and the general proportions, then I add the design details like ruffles and pockets. It's just much easier to work out proportions that way. Then you can start hacking. Depending on the changes you want to make and how you like to work as a pattern maker, you can either use flat pattern making techniques, so working on a table and 2D, or you could toile your block or sewing pattern and make the changes directly on it, so by draping or drawing style lines on. Depends how you like to work. And you don't need to toile things. Often if I've got sort of a more boxy silhouette, say this shirt, I'll just hold the pattern up to my body or on a mannequin and draw any style lines or pockets. Just helps me visualize the proportions a bit better and saves time not toiling. Once you've made all your changes, create a toile to check you're happy with it. Before you cut your toile, make sure you true your joining seams. This just means making sure they're the same length and all the notches match. The only reason they wouldn't be the same length is if your pattern is eased, stretched, has gathering or pleats. And check your seam angles. Most should be at 90 degrees, so a right angle. Any deliberate angular lines and the neckline don't need to be 90 degrees though. If you need to make changes, just update your pattern. Then you can finish your pattern by simply adding the correct seam and hem allowances for the finishes you want. I've also created a 10-step pattern checklist, which I use to check my patterns before I send them to production. And you can get a copy by simply heading to my website, CLIQD and subscribing to my newsletter. Then I'll email you a copy with a 10% discount code off your first CLIQD Pattern Kit order. which means you can get the PDF version of one of my guides for about 16 Australian dollars. I think the best way to think about pattern hacking is like a recipe. Imagine baking a cake without a recipe. Chefs can do it, but most of us would be completely lost. But if you start with the right ingredients, like a good sewing pattern and block, and have a recipe to follow, like one of my CLIQD guides, you can make something that would otherwise be impossible. Pattern hacking is a lot of fun, and it's a great way to learn pattern making. You'll get great results quickly, so it's quite rewarding too. So give it a go. And subscribe to my channel. I've got lots more pattern making videos coming up, plus I'll show you how to hack some of my blocks.